Namaskar, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, students and scholars. Education as a process of training guidance. Education may be regarded as a process of training one intellectually and morally, or directing and guiding one to proper development. Taking the second conception, first, education may mean direction, voice, leave the child to learn anything by natural consequences. He will learn something that may be harmful to himself and to the society he lives in. Give him a voice direction, he can adjust himself to the environment speedily and in the most desirable way. He can thus control his environment and grow in a desired direction. Sometimes his abilities may have to be redirected along required channels. His undesirable tendencies may have to be controlled. His attitudes, skills to be encouraged and cultivated. And direction, a process of emancipation. Education is training. Process of training or developing the physical, mental, process of training or developing the physical, mental, emotional. It is causing one to grow in directions desirable to the well-being of the society. It is training of character. In ancient days, the educators laid more stress on training of the mind, on sharpening of various mental faculties, led to the intellectualism. But emphasis sniffed to the other phases of growth. Though we do not lay so much stress on education, still has to do with discipline, that is self-discipline. Education requires from the person an organization and integral iron of his personality into a dynamic unity, acting under a education now is more than training. Education is more than training. It develops various powers in man, as we have said in the beginning, in the modern complex society, in the sense that training sources a desired outer form. Education ensures an inner desire, emphasized the acquisition of knowledge and facts. There was no freedom of the child. Immediate needs, intellects, and self-account. The teacher was a strict disciplinary man filling the empty minds of the child. The method relied too much on passive learning through drill, repetition, and memorization, often without understanding what was learned. Rousseau, through his brilliant and critical work, established the movement. Gradually, the influences from psychology and sociology confirmed the idea that education means that process of development in which consists the passage of human beings from infancy to maturity. The process whereby a child gradually adapts himself in various ways to his physical, social, and spiritual environment. The child learns by dint of its self-activity and continuous reconstruction of experiences. Education is the development of all those capacities in the individual which will enable him to control his environment and fulfill his possibilities. Education is a bipolar process in which one personality acts upon. The process is not only a conscious but a deliberate one. The educator has the clearly realized intention of modifying the development of the educand. The means by which the development of the educand is to be modified are to personality to the of the educand and the use of knowledge in its various forms. So teaching involves not only imparting a mastery of the use of in its various forms. So teaching involves not only imparting a mastery of knowledge of a limited amount but sympathetic understanding of the place of knowledge in the growth of each people and of its value to society. For this kind of process, the teacher should also have to learn many things from the learner to adjust and accommodate his method and contents of teaching. He should know the child first, and in this way, education becomes a bipolar process. Emphasis has been given today on the social environment of the child. A child is born, grows, and gets a meaning of his life in a society. He cannot be educated in a vacuum. So some educationist of today says the education is a tripolar process. The three poles are the educand, educator, and the society. Through the interaction among these three, the process of education goes on. The teacher should bring about the development of the child as a social being. Today, the responsibility of educating the child rests upon other factors or agencies of the social community. So the teacher must take into consideration the influence of them in his work. Education is a tripolar process. The educational process not only has a psychological side involving the educator and the educand, it has a sociological aspect also. The educand has to live in and for the society he belongs to. True education comes through the simulation of the educand's endowment by the demands of the social situation in which he finds himself. The educator is required to stimulate the educand's. Thus, the social aspect of the educational process becomes more important than the psychological one. The view that education is a tripolar process was given by John Dewey in Dewey's own words. All education proceeds by the participation of the individual in the social consciousness of the race. He believed that any system of education devoid of its social significance is incomplete. In a democratic society, every activity should develop out of the real needs of the group. Education must cater to the individual as well as the social needs. Child instincts, urges, impulses, and tendencies have to be directed towards the socially desirable channels. This is possible when the child participates in the social situation and there is interaction involving the educator, the educand, and the social environment. Scope of education. Education has a multifarious scope in the life of an individual. It can be broadly classified as formal, non-formal, and informal education. Let us try to understand the characteristics of the three forms of education. Formal education has some of the characteristics. Education imparted by formal institutes like schools, colleges, and universities. Though the main centers of formal education are schools or colleges, but library, museums, zoo, picture galleries, lectures, symposia, etc., serve as agencies of formal education. Definite curriculum and courses of studies are framed to teach the students and definite duration of years required to complete the courses. Proper time schedule prepared for day-to-day personalized teaching and semester or yearly planning of academic sessions are implemented. Both teacher and the students meet in a venue like the classroom but as well as the students is taken for formal record and completing the courses. Formal evaluation system, both internal and external, is implemented to assess the performance of the learners. Both continuous and term and examination are used for evaluating the performance of certification is done by the board or university for awarding the degrees or diplomas to the student. On the basis of the result, the students are promoted to higher classes or pursue higher degrees. Non-formal education. The characteristics of non-formal education are non-formal education endowed with flexible curricula, time schedule, choices of subjects, and the place of education. It is not necessarily require daily teacher-student interaction. Education imparted in distance mode like the open and distance learning system offered by the open schools and open universities. Even distance education departments of the regular institutes also offer non-formal courses or education. Like the formal education, non-formal education has a curriculum and uses variety of methods of teaching and mode of communication. The timing of regular classes in non-formal education is usually conducted on weekends, Saturday or Sunday, or during the multimedia communication system like print, self-learning materials, and non-print audio or video materials. Radio, television, teleconferencing, interactive radio are popularly used in formal education. In India, institutes open schooling and the state level open educational institutes provide non-formal education. Like formal education, degree awarded and certification are also done in non-formal education. In formal education, the characteristics of informal education are: informal education is also called natural or incidental education. No formal or non-formal institute is required to provide informal education. For informal education, there is no need of any curriculum, methods of teaching, teachers or mentors, and place of teaching. Education and experiences acquired during travel, interaction with people, family discourses, community and social dealings, interaction within the environment, neighborhoods, playmates, cultural and religious activities are necessarily informal education. Informal education supports formal as well as the non-formal education. Informal education does not provide degree or diploma, it simply enriches by filling the gaps of formal and non-formal education. Informal education may comprise the activities like storytelling, group discussion, reading books on your interest, listening to radio broadcasting, or watching educational television programs, visits to zoo, museum, educational fairs, and scientific exhibitions, attending lectures and conferences, etc. By discussing the characteristics of different forms of education, it can be said that it is not possible to get all sorts of education by utilizing only one form of education. Rather, all the three forms of education are required for the individual to develop their personality. The present constructivist concept of education, which is basically acquired through informal or incidental education, contributes to the formal system of education for constructing knowledge and developing understanding. It is like a basket of knowledge where all forms of education equally contribute to the fullest development of personality of the person. Aims of education. Educational aims are correlative to the ideals of life. Educational aims in any country have varied with its political, social and economic conditions. The educational system of Greece and Rome raised an issue that is still very important in education today. Should education train good individuals or good citizens? Are the social needs in education more important than the needs of the individual? An individual is born with certain potentialities and natural endowments. It is the task of the educator to develop into a distinct individual, but personality development does not take place in a vacuum. Thus, we have to decide whether the individual or the society should occupy the first place in education. Educators who emphasize individual aim of education to enable men to release, to mature, to discipline the human mind and spirit, the most influential of all the varieties of energy, has always been the task of education. Schools exist to help children succeed. Therefore, we would ask education to give us men with taste, respect for intelligence and independence of judgment that will give them confidence to approach the public for what it is, group of distinct individuals, not a lump of reflexes waiting to be conditioned. The object of education assumed here is development of the individual. American Association of School Administrators, A Climate for Individuality, Washington, D.C., the Association, 1965. In Rig Veda, education has been defined as something which makes a man self-reliant and selfless. According to Sir Percy Num, nothing good enters into the human world except in and through the free activities of individual men and women, and that educational practice must be sharp to accord with that truth. Mahatma Gandhi, the father of basic education, considers education as a means to develop men. He said, by education I mean an all-round drawing out of the best in child and man, body, mind and spirit. The University Education Commission 1948 speaks about education in these words. Education, according to Indian tradition, is initiation into the life of spirit, a training of human soul, in the pursuit of truth and the practice of virtue. Aristotle thinks that education is the creation of a sound mind in a sound body. In the words of Kant, education is the development in the individual of all the perfections of which he is capable. Why stress on individual aim? The biologists support to individual aim of education. According to Professor Z. Thompson, education is for the individual. Its function being to enable the individual to survive and live out its complete life. Education is imparted to preserve the individual life. Education is given for the sake of the individual to save him from destruction. Community exists for the individual, not the individual for the community. Community being the means and individual being the end. Education should not set means over the end. Individual and not society, therefore, should be the center of all educational efforts and activities. The naturalists spot to the individual aim of education. The naturalists like Nunn and Rousseau are of the view that the central aim of education is the autonomous development of the individual. According to Rousseau, everything is good as it comes from the hands of author of nature, but everything degenerates in the hand of man. God makes all things good. Man meddles with them and they become evil. It is therefore the education should be in accordance with the nature of the individual. The psychologists support to individual aim of education. The psychologists regard each individual a unique one. According to them, no two children are identical. The function of education should be develop the innate powers of the individual so that his maximum development may take place. The spiritualists support to education. The spiritualists are of the view that every individual is a separate entity and responsible for his own actions. Therefore, the main function of education should be to lead the individual to self-realization. Swami Vivekananda states, man is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this potentiality from within by controlling nature, external and internal, through education. The progressivist support to the individual aim of education. The progressivists hold the view that the progress and advancement of the world is due to great individuals born in different periods of history. It is therefore stated by them that the education process should secure condition for the complete development of individuality so that each individual make his original contribution to the human life. Criticism of the individual aim of education. According to Raymond, an individual is only a figment of imagination. An individual cannot be conceived in isolation from society. The critics of individual aim believe that the individual left to himself is an animal, selfish and indisciplined. The animal instinct of man, if given a loose reason, is sure to lead him to the state of primitive barbarism. where the law of jungle prevailed. Absolute freedom to the individual should not be given. The individual may begin to assert that I must have what I want. The exaggerated claim of the individual may have an adverse effect in the politics or economy of a country. The policy of laissez-faire is not conducive to national interest in the modern times. Social aim of education. The individual is regarded as endowed with a social nature. He is social by instinct. An individual seems everywhere and always to be caught up in an intricate web of social relations. Without them, the newborn baby would almost perish. The social process and the educational process are essentially one and the same. Curriculum is the social stuff out of which the individual realizes itself. Narrow interpretation of social aim of education. The protagonist of this, you think that stale is an idealized metaphysical entity over and above the individual citizen, superior in every way. Hence, the individual exists for the society. It is therefore the state that should decide the aim, mode, and type of education or training which an individual should receive for its welfare. The Spartan system of education in ancient times and the Nazi system of the recent past reflect this tendency. Undoubtedly, such notions played a major role in the world conflicts which led to the two world wars in 1914 and 1939. Broader interpretation of the social aim of education. The social aim of education finds expression in such concepts in education for social service, education for citizenship, education for social efficiency. Social aim of education has been stressed upon by these following educators. The primary purpose of the public schools is development of effective citizens. Citizens who uphold America ideals and who act in accordance with the social and moral standards that characterize democracy. The basic purpose of the school is to develop in all people the skill, understanding, beliefs and commitments necessary for government of and by the people. The large function of education is to realize the ideals of manhood and the kind of relationship between men that it cherishes. The distinctive function of education must inevitably involve the giving of direction to the social reconstruction that we so desperately need if we are going to solve our social problems and realize our ideals. Education means the culture which every generation purposely gives to its successors in order to qualify, to keep and to improve the level attained. The teacher's aim is not to educate his pupils in the abstract, but for life in any existing society. Education is the process of reconstruction or reconstitution of experience, giving it a more socialized value through the medium of increased social efficiency. Education cannot be considered in isolation or planned in a vacuum. It has to be used as a powerful instrument of social, economic, and political change and will therefore have to be related to the long-term national aspiration, the programs of national development in which the country is engaged, and the difficult short-term problem it is called upon to face. Education is an attempt on the part of the adult members of the human society to shape the development of a coming generation in accordance with its own ideals of life. Why social aim in education? Social aim has been stressed as the supporters of this aim believe that an individual cannot live and develop in isolation from society. Raymond says that the isolated individual is a figment of the imagination. The individual, being a social animal, will be molded to the needs of the society. The individual will develop through social context. According to John Dewey, social aim in education is stressed as education should make each individual socially efficient, and this social efficiency must be achieved by the positive use of individual powers and capacities in social occupation. A socially efficient individual is not a drag or parasite on society or any individual. A socially efficient individual is able to earn his livelihood. He also conforms to moral and social standards of conduct. Gandhiji formulated the basic schemes with the objectives of making people realize that education was not merely for the benefit of the individual but for the needs of a predominantly rural and agrarian population. Limitations of social aim in education. Social aim of education envisages the individual as a known entity and leaves little scope for the personality and unique characteristics to nourish. Aggression and violence against neighboring countries have resulted in educational aims of this type. Militant nationalism by country, right or wrong, are attitudes which may develop in tender minds. In recent years, there has been a tendency in Western countries among the young people to rebel against the cult of social efficiency. Many students prefer the development and growth of individuality and would want to give up the struggle for social efficiency. Thanks, numberless thanks to all of you, uncounted respects and thanks, welcomes all of you. Nice to see all of you.